The night everything changed. The streets were silent that night. The kind of silence that settles over a city when it holds its breath, waiting for something it cannot name. Victor Rossetti drove alone through the shadows of the industrial district, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. Behind him lay another meeting where men trembled at his words. Another envelope of blood money. Another reminder that he had become the monster his father always said he would be. He was tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep could fix. The kind that lived in his bones. The streetlights flickered above like dying heartbeats as his black Mercedes rolled through the empty roads. Victor kept his eyes forward, his jaw tight, his mind already calculating tomorrow's problems. Then he saw her. A small figure standing alone beneath a broken streetlight. A child. No more than 5 years old. Her pink dress dirty. Her tiny shoulders shaking with sobs that seemed too large for her body. Victor's foot found the brake before his mind could process why. The car stopped. For a long moment, he simply stared through the windshield at this impossible sight. A little girl, alone at 2 a.m, on a street where even grown men feared to walk. Something in his chest moved. Something he thought had died years ago. He stepped out of the car. The night air was cold, carrying the distant sound of traffic and the closer sound of her crying. She looked up as he approached, her face streaked with tears, her dark eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. "Hey," Victor said, his voice softer than it had been in years. "Hey, little one, what are you doing out here alone?" She didn't answer. She just looked at him with those eyes dark, deep, somehow familiar in a way that made his heart stumble. Victor knelt before her, bringing himself to her level. The concrete was cold beneath his expensive suit, but he didn't care. He reached out slowly, carefully, as if approaching a wounded bird. "Are you lost? Where's your mama?" At the word mama, the girl's face crumpled, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. She threw herself forward, wrapping her tiny arms around his neck, burying her face against his shoulder. Victor froze. No one had touched him with trust in over a decade. No one had held him without fear, without calculation, without wanting something in return. But this child, this small, trembling child, clung to him like he was safety itself. Slowly, his arms came up around her. He lifted her from the ground, feeling how light she was, how fragile. Her sobs began to quiet against his chest, replaced by shuddering breaths and the occasional whimper. "It's okay," he heard himself say. "I've got you. You're safe now." He carried her to the car and settled her gently in the back seat. She wouldn't let go of his jacket, so he sat with her for a moment, letting her hold on until her grip finally loosened. As he drove into the night, Victor glanced at her in the rearview mirror. She had fallen asleep, her cheek pressed against the leather seat, her small hand still clutching the fabric of his coat. Who could leave such an innocent soul alone in the streets? And why did her face, even in sleep, look like someone he had tried so hard to forget? The man they feared. They called him the Silence. Not because Victor Rossetti was quiet, but because silence followed wherever he went. When he entered a room, conversations stopped. When he made a decision, arguments ended. When he was displeased, men simply disappeared. He had built his empire from nothing. His father had been a drunk who died in a prison cell. His mother had abandoned him when he was 7, left him on the doorstep of an uncle who taught him that the world was a brutal place, and only the brutal survived. By 25, Victor controlled the shipping routes along the coast. By 30, he owned half the city's underground economy. By 40, he sat alone at the top of an empire that stretched across 3 states. but empires built on fear have a price. His mansion was a palace of marble and silence. 22 rooms, all empty. A dining table that seated 16, where he ate alone every night. A bedroom larger than the apartment he grew up in, where he lay awake listening to the hollow echo of his own breathing. There had been one light in his darkness. Once. Her name was Elena. She had worked at a small flower shop downtown. Victor had noticed her on a Tuesday afternoon, arranging roses in the window with hands that moved like music. She had looked up, caught him staring, and smiled without fear. That smile had undone him. For 2 years, Elena had been his secret, his refuge, the only person who saw him not as the silence, but as Victor, a man who was afraid of thunderstorms, who secretly loved old jazz records, who sometimes cried when he thought no one was watching. She had made him believe he could be different. Then, one morning, she was gone. A single note on the kitchen counter. I can't raise a child in your world. Don't look for me. Please, let me go. A child. Victor had read those words 1,000 times. He had sent men to find her, but Elena had vanished like smoke. She had planned her escape perfectly, disappeared into a life he could never touch. For months he had searched. For years he had wondered. Did she have the baby? Was it a boy or a girl? Did the child have her smile, her kindness, her light? Eventually, Victor stopped asking. He locked those questions in a room in his heart and threw away the key. He told himself it was better this way. Better that his child, if there even was a child, never knew the monster their father had become. But some doors, once opened, can never be fully closed. The girl named Sophia. The girl woke as Victor carried her into the mansion. Where am I? She whispered, her voice small and hoarse from crying. Somewhere safe, Victor said. What's your name? She hesitated, studying his face with those dark, serious eyes. Sophia. Sophia, he repeated. The name felt strange on his tongue, like a word in a language he had forgotten. That's a beautiful name. Are you hungry, Sophia? She nodded. In the kitchen, Victor realized he had no idea what children ate. He found bread, some cheese, a jar of honey. He made her a clumsy sandwich while she sat at the enormous kitchen island, her bare feet dangling far above the floor. Where's your mama? He asked gently. Sophia's eyes filled with tears again, but she didn't cry. She seemed to be holding it back with all her strength. Mama went to sleep. The doctors said she won't wake up anymore. Victor's hands stopped moving. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I'm so sorry, Sophia. Aunt Maria was supposed to take care of me, Sophia continued, her voice trembling. But she said she didn't want me. She left me by the road and drove away. Something dark and hot moved through Victor's chest. Rage. Pure and absolute. Someone had abandoned this child like garbage on the street. Someone would answer for that. But he pushed the rage down. Right now, this little girl needed kindness, not vengeance. You're going to stay here tonight, Victor said. We'll figure everything out tomorrow. Okay? You're safe now. Sophia nodded, but she didn't touch her sandwich. Instead, she reached into the pocket of her dress and pulled out a small golden locket. Mama told me to keep this safe, she said. She said it would help me find my family. She held it out to Victor. His hands trembled as he took it. The locket was old, the gold worn smooth by years of touch. He recognized it immediately. He had given it to Elena on their first anniversary. Inside was a photograph of a young couple laughing in the rain. Elena, her hair wild and wet, her smile radiant. And beside her, a younger Victor, his eyes bright with something that looked almost like hope. The world stopped. Victor stared at the photograph, then at Sophia, then at the photograph again. The same dark eyes, the same curve of the chin, the same way of tilting her head when she was confused. "Sophia," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Your mama's name, was it Elena?" Sophia's eyes widened. "You knew my mama?" Victor couldn't speak. His throat had closed around words too large to say. He pulled out his phone, made a single call to his most trusted man. "I need everything," he said. "Birth certificates, hospital records, everything about Elena Vance for the past 6 years. Now, the truth that changed him. The documents arrived by morning. Sophia was asleep in a guest room, clutching a pillow that was larger than she was. Victor sat in his study, surrounded by papers, his hands shaking as he read the truth he had waited 6 years to know. Elena had given birth to a daughter 8 months after she left him. Sophia Rose Vance, born healthy at 7 pounds, 3 ounces. Named after Victor's grandmother, a name he had mentioned only once, on a quiet night when Elena had asked him about his family. Elena had raised Sophia alone. She had worked as a schoolteacher in a small town 300 miles away. She had been careful, quiet, invisible. 3 months ago, Elena had been diagnosed with cancer. It had moved fast, too fast for treatment, too fast for goodbyes. She had died 17 days ago, leaving Sophia in the care of her sister Maria, a woman who, apparently, had seen the child as nothing more than a burden. Victor read Elena's will 3 times. At the bottom, beneath all the legal language, she had written a note in her own handwriting. "If anything happens to me, please make sure Sophia knows she is loved. I tried to give her a different life, a safer life, away from darkness. But I know that darkness is not the whole truth of who her father is. There was light in him once. Maybe, if the world is kind, Sophia will find it." Victor broke. For the first time in 20 years, he wept. Not quiet tears, but deep, wrenching sobs that tore through his chest like storms through empty fields. He wept for Elena, who had died alone. He wept for Sophia, who had been thrown away like nothing. And he wept for himself, for all the years he had lost, all the moments he would never get back. When the tears finally stopped, Victor made a decision. He would not let his daughter grow up in his world. He would not let her learn the price of power, the weight of fear, the loneliness of empire. He would give her what Elena had wanted, a life of light, even if it cost him everything, the betrayal. But darkness does not release its servants easily. Marco Vitelli had been Victor's second-in-command for 12 years. He was smart, loyal, and utterly without conscience. Exactly the kind of man Victor had needed to build his empire. Marco noticed the change immediately. Victor missed meetings. He came home early. He spent hours with the child, teaching her to play chess, reading her stories, watching cartoons he didn't understand. "You're getting soft," Marco said one evening, finding Victor in the kitchen, covered in flour, attempting to bake cookies. "The men are talking. Let them talk. The Columbo, what do you want?" "Everything," Marco said simply. "The shipping routes, the banks, the politicians. Sign it over and the girl lives. Refuse and—" He shrugged. "Children are fragile." Sophia looked up at Victor. Her eyes were full of tears, but beneath the tears was something else. Trust. Complete and unconditional trust. "Daddy will save me." She didn't even know he was her father yet, but she trusted him anyway. Victor thought of Elena's note. There was light in him once. He thought of all the years he had spent building his empire. All the blood, all the silence, all the empty rooms. and he realized that none of it mattered. "Give me the papers," Victor said quietly. "The price of love." Victor signed away his empire that night. 20 years of work, erased with a signature. Everything he had built, everything he had sacrificed, gone. Marco took it all. The money, the power, the fear. He walked out of Victor's mansion with the smile of a man who had won. But he left Sophia behind. In the end, that was all Victor needed. When the cars drove away and the house fell silent, Sophia climbed into Victor's arms and held on tight. "I was scared," she whispered. "I know, sweetheart. I was scared too. But you came for me. I will always come for you." Victor pressed his lips to the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her hair. Lavender shampoo and something sweeter, something that reminded him of Elena. Always. They left the city 3 days later. Victor sold the mansion, the cars, the artwork. He kept only what mattered. Elena's locket, Sophia's hand in his, and a small box of photographs he had hidden away years ago. They drove west, toward the mountains, toward a life neither of them could imagine. In the back seat, Sophia watched the city disappear behind them. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere new," Victor said. "Somewhere nobody knows my name. Will you stay with me?" Victor looked at her in the rearview mirror. This impossible gift, this second chance he had never deserved. "Forever," he said. "If you'll let me." Sophia smiled. It was Elena's smile, full of light and trust and something that looked almost like hope. "Okay," she said. "But you have to promise." "I promise." The new beginning. They settled in a small town at the base of the mountains. Victor bought a house with a garden, 3 bedrooms, and a porch that faced the sunset. It was nothing like his mansion. Smaller, simpler, filled with sounds instead of silence. He told Sophia the truth on her 6th birthday. He showed her the photograph in the locket, explained how her mother had loved her enough to run, loved her enough to give her a chance. "You're my daddy?" Sophia asked, her eyes wide. "If you want me to be." She thought about it for a long moment, longer than Victor could bear. Then she smiled, climbed into his lap, and wrapped her arms around his neck. "I already knew," she whispered. "You did. You hold me the same way Mama did. Like you're afraid I'll disappear." Victor couldn't speak. He just held her tighter. This small person who had broken through every wall he had ever built. 10 years later. Sophia is 16 now. She plays guitar, sings in the school choir, and dreams of becoming a doctor. She has her mother's smile and her father's stubbornness. She knows about Victor's past. He told her when she was old enough to understand, and she chose to love him anyway. "Everyone deserves a second chance," she told him once. "That's what Mom believed. That's why she wrote that note." Victor keeps the note in his wallet, worn soft from years of touch. He reads it sometimes, late at night, when the old darkness threatens to return. There was light in him once. Maybe Sophia will find it. She did. Elena. She found it and she made it grow. Victor Rossetti was once the most feared man in the city. Now he coaches Little League Baseball, attends PTA meetings, and argues with his daughter about curfew. He has never been happier. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, he sits on the porch and watches the sunset paint the mountains gold. Sophia joins him with 2 cups of tea, settling into the chair beside his. "Thanks, Dad," she says. "For what?" "For stopping. That night on the road. For not driving past." Victor reaches over and takes her hand, no longer tiny, no longer trembling, but still the most precious thing he has ever held. "I couldn't have driven past," he says quietly. "Something in me knew." before I even understood it. Something in me knew you were mine to protect. Sophia leans her head against his shoulder. I love you, Dad. I love you too, sweetheart. More than everything I ever had. More than everything I ever gave up. The sun sets behind the mountains, and the sky fills with colors that have no names. Somewhere in the distance, a child laughs. A dog barks. Life goes on, ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. Victor Rossetti was once the silence. Now he is just a father, watching the sunset with his daughter, grateful for every second chance he never thought he deserved. And in the silence of that perfect moment, he finally understands. This was always what power was supposed to feel like. Not fear, not control, not empire, just love, just this, just her hand in his, and the knowledge that he would give it all up again, every time without hesitation, for one more moment like this.